Hey everyone! So when you think of ancient Rome, what comes to mind? Legionaries, right? Gladiators, emperors, all that epic stuff. But have you ever stopped to think about what it actually sounded like? Well, today, we're going to tune in to the surprisingly loud and honestly epic soundtrack of the Roman world. Okay, so let's jump right in with a question. Picture the streets of Rome. With all those massive marble temples and stone forums. Do you think it was a quiet, peaceful place? Just take a second and think about that. All right. If you guessed no way, you are spot on. Rome was the complete opposite of quiet. It was a city just buzzing with sound. And music? Music was right at the heart of everything, from public life to private homes. It was, literally, the epic soundtrack for an entire empire. So, where did all this music come from? Well, Roman music didn't just pop up out of thin air. The Romans were like sponges for culture. They took a ton of inspiration from their neighbors, the Etruscans. We can thank them for a lot of the brass instruments. And they were huge fans of the super sophisticated music of the Greeks, so they adopted their musical theory and scales. And naturally, as the empire got bigger and bigger, its playlist did too, pulling in sounds and styles from all over the Mediterranean. Okay, before we dive into the cool instruments, there's one key word we got to get out of the way: monophonic. I know, it sounds a little complicated, but trust me, it's super simple. All it means is a single line of melody. No harmony, no chords. It's like if you're just humming a tune by yourself, or if a whole crowd is singing the exact same melody together. That's it. That's monophonic music, and it was basically the foundation of the whole Roman sound. All right, let's kick things off with the heavy hitters. We're talking about the loud, powerful instruments that were used for the military, for government stuff, and for those huge public spectacles. First up, we have the Roman tuba. Now get the image of a modern orchestra tuba out of your head. This was totally different. It was a long, straight trumpet made of bronze, and its whole job was to blast a loud, piercing sound that could cut right through the chaos of a battlefield. And what's really wild is that it had no valves. That meant the musician had to control every single note just by using their lips and their breath. Talk about skill, right? And then there's the cornu. You literally couldn't miss this thing. It was this giant circular horn, so big that it actually wrapped around the musician's body. Can you just imagine seeing and hearing that on the battlefield? Its deep, booming calls were what signaled whole formations of troops to advance or retreat or change direction. This wasn't just an instrument, you guys. It was a symbol of pure military power. Okay, if you want a perfect example of Roman ingenuity, look no further than the hydraulis. This was the high-tech sound system of the ancient world, a water-powered organ. Seriously. It used the weight of water to create air pressure, which was then forced through these massive metal pipes. A player would use a keyboard, yes, a keyboard, to pick the notes, and the sound it made was so powerful it could fill the entire Colosseum during the games. Just an incredible piece of engineering and art, all rolled into one. All right, so we've covered the big, loud instruments of power, but Roman music wasn't all about that. What about music for art, or for learning, or just chilling at home? Let's switch gears and tune into the softer, more personal side of the Roman soundscape. When it came to string instruments, the Romans basically had two main players that look kind of similar but had totally different jobs. First, you've got the kithara. Think of this as the grand piano of its day. It was large, super ornate, and played by professional concert musicians. The superstars. Then you have the lyre. This was the smaller, simpler version. It was more like the acoustic guitar that students and amateurs would learn on and play at home. And it wasn't just those two. They also had an early kind of lute called the pandura. And here's a cool little fact for you. The strings on these instruments were made from animal gut. Sounds a bit gross, maybe, but it gave them this really warm, rich tone. And get this, in Rome, learning to play an instrument like the lyre wasn't just a fun hobby. It was seen as a sign that you had a really good, well-rounded education. So where was all this music actually happening? Well, from the grandest stages to the most private dinner parties, music was pretty much the key ingredient for any kind of Roman entertainment. Okay, you have to forget everything you think you know about boring ancient plays. Roman theater was basically a Broadway musical. I'm serious. The plays were packed with songs and dances. You'd have live musicians off to the side. Actors would just burst into these long, emotional solos to show off their singing skills. And the theaters themselves, they were architectural marvels, engineered so that every single note could be heard, even way up in the nosebleed seats. And what about a fancy Roman dinner party, a banquet? Music there was absolutely essential. Just picture it. You're reclining on a couch, and the wealthy host has hired musicians to play these soft, beautiful tunes on a lyre or a flute. But this wasn't just background music, not at all. It was a total status symbol. It was the host's way of showing off their wealth and their refined, cultured taste to all their guests. It set the vibe. But it was always pleasant enough that you could still have a good conversation. So yeah, music was for parties and plays, but it also had two other roles that were absolutely critical to the core of Roman society. We're talking religion and the military. And for these two things, music wasn't just entertainment. It was essential. So let's break that down. First, in a religious ceremony, you'd hear an instrument called the tibia, which was a kind of double pipe. Its job was twofold. First, to create a holy, sacred atmosphere, but also, and this is super important, it was played to drown out any bad or unlucky noises that might happen during a sacrifice and displease the gods. Then, in the military, which we've already touched on, the tuba and the cornu were basically the command and control system. They signaled everything from attack to retreat, they boosted morale, and they kept thousands of soldiers marching in perfect time. Pretty amazing, huh? Okay, so the Roman Empire fell a long, long time ago. But did its music just vanish? Not a chance. Let's dig into the eternal echo of Roman music and see how it's actually still influencing us today. Believe me, the legacy is huge. So many of their instruments, like that tuba and cornu we talked about, are the ancient ancestors of the brass instruments we have in orchestras today. Those military bugle calls you hear, they are direct descendants of the signals the Roman legions used. The incredible acoustics in their theaters taught us lessons we still use when designing concert halls. And even some of the chants from their religious rituals helped shape the development of European church music. Seriously, the echoes of Roman music are all around us. And that brings us to the end of our journey. But I want to leave you with one last thing to think about. After everything we've covered today, from the piercing blast of the tuba to the soft notes of the lyre, what sound from our world right now? I don't know, maybe heavy metal or electronic dance music. What sound do you think would absolutely blow the mind of an ancient Roman? Just something to chew on. Thanks for hanging out with me today.